So I've been wanting to make a early starting guide for Devil Daggers players for quite a while now, and one of the reasons for that was that recently I was looking for a leaderboard, and the leaderboard is currently comprised of about 193,000 players. And there's a very large disparity between the players who have reached 500 plus seconds, so gotten the achievement and pushed up to insane heights, as you can see here, and the majority of people which haven't passed 100 or so seconds. Now, the best way to demonstrate that is to look at the middle ground for rankings. So if we say go to the top 100,000 players, you can see the top 100,000 spot starts at 69 seconds. If we go to 50,000 players, you can see it goes to 110 seconds. So in order to get top 50,000, you'd only need to get to 110 seconds survived. What about, say, 10,000? 10,000's a little fairer. It's in the 221. What about 66666? Okay, so that brings us to around 250 seconds. And that's where the game starts to, as a whole, pick up quite a bit of steam. But out of 193,000, you have to consider that 187,000 people have never reached more than, say, 4 minutes survived in the game. So my main reason for doing this guide was to bring that number to a more respectable figure. Because the early game is not actually as hard as it may seem. It has a very clear structure and is actually quite easy to navigate with a bit of practice and a bit of patience. So what I wanted to spend this guide doing was going through some runs, basically just one run up to about 250-260 seconds, and then replay it and explain the process and strategy that I have for doing it. And I don't mean doing it in the manner that you see one of the top players doing it. If you watched any of the top replays, you will see that the strategy for early game is ridiculously convoluted and quite alienating. I can expect that probably half of the players who are under the 100-second mark have probably seen at least one of these replays, and in the process of watching it, become very alienated by the idea of getting to a high skill cap because of how ridiculous a lot of the end-game gameplay strategies can seem. So I'm not going to be doing any of that, but I am going to be showing you a very basic run, simply clearing all of the enemies as efficiently and fast as possible, and as well as that, explaining the best process of target priority, your movement around the arena, and any other kind of tips and tricks that are worth noting as you're moving through the run. So, contrary to what most people will believe, you don't actually need to do a super try-hard beginning to a match. You can get, it is possible to get to 1,000 plus seconds without doing any of the complicated stuff that a lot of these players might be doing. The only difficulty, of course, is learning the manner by which you have to go through a run, because every run has a predetermined set of spawns, and those spawns may not deviate, but their positioning around the arena, to some extent, the movements of the skulls vary from each run to the next. So what I'll do from here on is do a simple run, no fancy farming. I will just do one standard run to begin, and then I will just cut the run off at around 260, yeah, around 260 seconds, and then replay it and explain the process of what I've been doing over the course of this run. I always play with the timer on, something to note. Okay. So that would be a typical run without doing any of the fancy farming that you see in a top level player's run. Now I'm going to play it back slow so I can spend some time explaining the process of what I was doing at each point. Keep in mind that because the spawns are predetermined, I will be including a guide in the description below to explain, which will detail the spawns as they come at which second mark and intervals. And there is a whole separate guide made by the number 3 player at the moment, Binter, which explains the process of dealing with these angry gigapede monstrosities that come out at 260 seconds. So I'll also link that in the description as well. So I'll slow this down. Now the first spawn comes at 3 seconds. Every run starts the same. You get a tower that spawns in at 3 seconds. Towers always spawn, single gem towers like this, always spawn with the gem on them facing away from you. And you can see even before it starts spitting that I am aiming above the tower. The best way to explain the reasoning for that is as they spit out from the tower, your fire is already hitting them and eliminating the spread of these skulls as they reach out into the arena. You can see that the towers spin clockwise towards you, exposing the gem as they're rotating around. So the idea there is to clear as many of the skulls early as possible, as you can see here. Aiming straight for the tower, firing before it spits. I started a little late there. And then moving in a tight circular kind of motion, and you quickly clean them up. I stop firing so that the gems will attract towards me, which is a very important aspect that most new players aren't aware of. That it basically forms a sort of reload mechanic, that when the gems from the horned skulls and the towers are released, they won't actually come to you unless you stop shooting. When you're doing this stream fire, the gems will basically stay in place, but are subject to the most recent motion that they've been moving in. So basically, if it's released from a tower and you stop shooting briefly, the gem will start to move towards you, but as you keep shooting, it won't attract directly at you, but continue moving in the same trajectory that it was before you started shooting. So it's quite difficult to exactly explain how that is, how it works, but you'll see it in practice as you play quite a bit. And you can see there that the only point that actually damages the tower is the actual gem itself. None of hitting the body actually does any damage whatsoever. Here, when the spider spawns at 39 seconds, along with the 2 gem tower, you always want to target the spider first. It is actually possible to hit the spider's head as it is spawning in with its head dropped. However, it's a much smaller basically hitbox at the start. I'll see if I can slow this down even more just to finish explaining. So what's important to recognize is the sound of the environment around you. In a match where you see the spider, or you hear the spider, it's very important to have the situational awareness to go, okay, the spider has spawned to the left of me, or the right of me, behind me, in front of me, wherever it is in your peripheral hearing range. So once you have a clear idea of where that spider is, you move on the arena as close as you can get to it. And the reason for that is if you have somewhat shaky aim, which is to be expected when you're first starting out. You want to be as close to that spider as you can get. The reason you want to focus down on the spider is that it will suck up any of the gems that you release from any towers and prevent you from actually collecting them. And as well as that, any gems that it actually sucks into itself, it will spit out as eggs. And those eggs will eventually turn into spiderlings, which will crawl around on the ground and quite quickly kill you, like pretty much everything else in this game. So that's the reason that in almost all cases throughout this run, you'll see that I target the spiders first. The 2 gem tower that spawns behind you is also a major issue, and here I did a quick turn around the arena to make sure that I knew where that tower was behind me, because it will always spawn opposite to the spider. And once I know where it is, I can strafe, basically left or right, depending on once I know where, if it's spat or not. There isn't really too much distinction to be made between the 1 gem and 2 gem towers, other than them having 2 gems on them, and that they spit out a much more dangerous and aggressive kind of skull, which you'll see here as I speed it up just a little bit. And again, the 2 gem towers also spin clockwise, so by standing in the middle of the arena, at least at the start of the match, or at the start of the run, you know how they're going to be moving towards you. And you can see that the horn skull that's coming out of this tower is a lot more distinctive, and when you're listening to it in a run that isn't slowed down, you will hear that distinctive laughing sound. And if you ever hear that behind you, that is the time to turn around. And you can see I target it straight away before I focus down the towers. Take note of my movement, because I'm aware that from where I was standing in the center of the arena, that a tower spawned in front of me and behind me. I made the move to strafe to the outside of the arena and lead the skulls out of the center of the arena towards where my aim was. It's a quite difficult thing to get used to doing, to be moving and aiming quite accurately at the same time. And you can see there, even as I'm killing the towers, I'm immediately stop firing to allow those gems to come to me. I move backwards once I know that there's no towers or enemies behind me, and lead on the skulls. And the importance of leading on the skulls is that they tend to collectively bunch together. You can see I do these wide sweeping spins to make sure that things are clear. And again, you can see I only have this 1 tower on the map. So the next towers will come in at 64 seconds. So I have time to move to the opposite side of this tower as it's continuing to rotate. You can see again here I'm just demonstrating that no matter what kind of power you have, as you can see I've got the upgraded 3-finger hand at this point, no matter what power you have in the hand, you can't do direct damage to any part of the squid other than the gems. So always be mindful when you're picking which targets to aim for that the most ideal target is always the one with the gems exposed to you. And you'll see why that's important as we move on here. So you can see I see 1 tower has spawned. Because they both spit at the same time in these double spawns, I decide to pre-fire it. I do a slight movement away so I can clear the skulls, and then turn straight towards where the second tower is sending skulls my way, and quickly spray them down. Occasionally you miss like that, and you have to lead your shots predicting where the skulls will move to. A lot of that comes down to familiarity with the movement of the skulls, which in most cases is dependent on where you are situated. That is not true for the generic horned skulls, which come out of the single gem towers, which actually move in random arcs around the arena. You can see here, this is the ideal targeting priority to do on these double spawns. Aim for the 2 gem tower first, do a quick clear. You can see I cut that rather close. Do a quick clear on that, and then turn towards the single gem tower and clear those as well. So essentially at each of the double spawns you want to end up standing in the middle of the arena, and then from that point shoot off the first gem on the 2 gem tower, then move towards one side of the arena and clear out the other gem, as you will see here. So in the middle of the arena, shoot the first gem, tilt your aim slightly up so it's just between the tentacles. Most of the skulls get clipped out by that, and then you move slightly over to clip the other gem. Then you move your aim back towards the center of the arena where the second lot of skulls is getting spat towards you. You can see that other skull is just drifting aimlessly around the arena. That can be a aspect of unpredictability, because sometimes you can be on a good run and suddenly that can zip out of nowhere and just whack you. So at this point, at 109 seconds, you actually only get a single tower spawn. This is important for a few reasons. It's a good signal if you're not actually keeping track of time when a single tower spawns here, the double gen, that there is going to be the next kind of enemy coming in a few moments. So again, follow the same strategy as before. Center of the arena, spray the gem off the front, aim up and clear the skulls. Move slightly to the side, clear the other gem, and then move my aim to clear those skulls. Now you will hear the rumbling and you see that dust cloud emerging. Here comes the centipede. So if you're just looking for consistent, straightforward runs, don't target the centipede at all first. You can see now that the spider has appeared behind it, and something else important to note. The spider here that spawns around the 120 mark will always spawn on the opposite side of the arena that the squid 2, so the 2 gem squid at 109 seconds is on. So you can get a pretty clear idea of where that spider will be 100% of the time by making note in your head of, okay, the tower at 109 seconds spawned on the right side of the arena, so I'm paying attention to the left side of the arena. And so once the centipede's popped up and the spider's coming, you've got a pretty much guaranteed chance that the spider will appear on that side. So you see there, I just target down the spider and it's dealt with, no problem at all. One last thing to mention about spiders before we continue is that their hitbox is actually the face itself, not the gem on the actual spiders just under its mouth. Onto the centipede. Now you can see here, as I speed it up, that the centipede actually moves abstractly around the edge of the arena for a little while, and then it suddenly gains attention that you exist and moves like this towards you, gyrating up and down off the ground. What you want to do is actually get into the arc where it's gyrating up off the ground and aim just as I'm aiming here, where I have it in a straight line. It goes right over my head and I'm spraying directly into the underside of its body. If you get it at an angle like this, 100% of the time you will kill it. Oftentimes people ask, why doesn't it kill you when it's like that? And what actually happens is when you move onto the underside of the centipede is triggered to go underground, but it has to do so in an arc of movement. So as it's moving in an arc of movement and it goes over the top of you, it moves directly down but in an arc. So unless you're at too far a distance away from it, the triggering of that action to go underground will happen behind you. So you don't actually have to worry about it hitting you unless it strikes you directly in the head as it's moving down, because you misjudged your positioning slightly. So here comes a bit where you're basically doing the exact same spawns as before, where you've got double spawns. You've got the 2 gem tower and the single gem tower. But instead of them being at intervals of 14 seconds, they're now at intervals of 10 seconds. So they come at 134 seconds, 144, 154, and 164. If you are collecting gems and not losing any in the process of this, you are very close to getting the second upgrade at hand. Again here I slightly misjudge, but by simply moving, being aware of the positioning of both towers, I can simply backstrafe away from them, lead them on, target the unpredictable skull, and keep moving. I aim at this tower because it's got an exposed gem, but at the same time I am mindful that there are still skulls behind me, so I continue the circular movement around the arena and turn my aim back towards these skulls. And you can see the sideways strafe in action there, and how the skulls kind of drift wide around you and don't instantly pinpoint your location. Here comes the next lot of towers. Again, this section takes quite a bit of practice to get used to, because it does step up the intensity in terms of speed, but as with all good players, you basically just need to practice until it becomes like second nature. Again, I am leaving a small group of skulls just circling behind me, so at this point I'm well aware that there's a group of skulls behind me, and that was basically the ideal point to be getting the upgrade. The upgrade comes at 70 gems, and typically if you're collecting every gem without doing any farming whatsoever, like leaving the towers up so that they respit more skulls, you should get it around the 154-55 second mark of a run. Now, the reason that my hand is blue is actually because I have every gem that I collect will now be getting stored as homing daggers. I'm not using them in this run because I feel like a better demonstration of self-improvement is not having to rely on homing daggers, which tend to be very unreliable when you are at this stage of the upgrades to your hand. But you can see how much easier it is to clear towers. It takes far less time and effort to clear them, but the spread on the dagger shots is a lot larger, and you can see just how far out the daggers are being spread. That does make it a lot easier to clear towers when they are spitting out by simply aiming above or between the tentacles. And you can see I'm doing the exact same strategies as before, but just in a slightly faster pace, even though this is obviously slow motion. Keeping in mind that between all of these shots, the only reason the gems are coming to me is because I stop firing. Okay. Here is an important point, because this section of the game is where a lot of people begin to lose control. 174 seconds is when 3 spiders and a centipede come out at the exact same time. It really throws the pressure on, because it's only 10 seconds before the next spawns of enemies start to come in. So, as I discussed earlier, we will always target the spiders first. I'm using streamfire in this case rather than shotgunning, which is possible by doing firm clicks of the left mouse button. Simply because for spiders it's important to always be keeping damage on them until they're dead, because if you stop damaging them for 1 second, they will drop their head and make themselves much harder targets to take down, and then you can easily get distracted with other towers and skulls and centipedes and whatever, and it will complicate things later when you've left a spider up and it's sucked all the gems up. Then suddenly you've run out of homing daggers, or you've got you've got all these eggs all over the field. All sorts of problems can come up if you don't deal with the spiders as fast as possible. And you can see there that I moved close to the spiders and quickly aimed up in their head, and I've ignored this centipede for the moment. The reason I'm ignoring it here is that at 184 you get the next tower spawns, and rather than them being 10 seconds apart, they're 5 seconds apart as double spawns. So this is where it really throws the pressure on, because you can either keep the towers alive and just clear the skulls, but be keeping in mind that the towers will be respitting more skulls in the next 20 seconds. So you can see there, I deal with the 2 gem towers straight away, clear out as many skulls as I can, and try to do the same for the other tower at the back by clearing out the aimlessly drifting skull, and some of the ones that are chasing me I am just keeping aware of and moving in a tight circle so that they are kept on my tail and disregarded for the moment. To avoid running into things, you always want to be keeping your firing. Well, you want to keep firing unless you are trying to collect gems. As you can see there, I stopped firing to collect some gems. I clear the problematic skulls, especially the ones that are aggressive coming out of the 2 gem towers, and this is where people go a bit insane, because at 200 seconds you get yet another 3 spiders. So the idea here is to kill the spiders at 174 seconds, typically to disregard the centipede, unless you have the chance to do a very quick clear. Clear as many skulls from the towers as you can, and then when the spiders come, hopefully you're clear enough that you can go straight for them without having to worry about skulls drifting around. Again, this will take quite a bit of practice, and you can see why this bit is where a lot of people start to lose control, because they think that leaving towers up for too long is, disastrous, and they're not quite sure what you're meant to target. So at the 200, well, at the 174 mark, you want the spiders gone. Between that point, you want to clear as many of the towers and skulls as you can by 200 seconds, and then at 200 seconds, you want to target those spiders. You can see there, I just do a little bit of a mad spray around just to see if I can deal with that one drifting skull. while the spiders are on the field, I will be able to collect no gems because the spiders will be sucking them up. And you can see that this gem is drifting towards the spiders, the spider here, as I'm aiming it down. But keeping full damage on it, it doesn't take too long for a spider to go down, especially not with this stage of hand. And you can see here, this is the result of leaving the towers up, is that you get these new spawns of skulls coming in. So here, ideally, unless you're trying to collect just a few more gems, it's not worth leaving these towers up any longer. And so you can see here, I just go around, try and clear as many as I can. Do some quick spraying just to try and get those drifting skulls as cleared as possible. And here I quickly go for a scrape along the centipede. It's not necessarily essential to be doing this unless, well, I mean, unless you've got a lot of towers on the field. Sometimes it's worth just spraying some homing daggers around by pressing right click and helping you to clear out all the skulls and towers before this point. So unfortunately this run doesn't demonstrate it so well, but at 229 seconds you get 6 towers spawn all around the arena, and the ideal strategy is to move in a anti-clockwise direction around the wide side of the arena, as you'll see me doing here. When they all spit out at you, if you're in the middle of the arena, you're pretty much stuffed. So you want to strafe out of the middle of the arena towards the closest edge, clear some of the skulls from the middle as you're moving towards the edge, and then as the towers are turning clockwise towards you, shoot the gems off them as they're available. Now, because there's so many aimlessly drifting skulls here, this is where I turn my attention towards the middle of the arena. I want to clear as many of these as possible, as they're basically just rogue elements. Because I'm moving at this strafing sideways angle and moving this in slow motion, you can't actually see so well that I'm actually bunny hopping as well as sideways strafing. This helps me keep a speed that can outpace the small skulls that you can see to the left of screen. They are not really my main focus, because if I keep this momentum of moving wide around the arena edge, I don't have to worry about them as much. So here I'm just trying to clear the whole ring of these single gem towers, but you can see at the 240 mark that I've got another lot of these. Well, I have 3 2 gem towers coming in at the same time, and this is where you will need to be strafing sideways as well as aiming in front of you, behind you, basically just targeting the laughing horn skulls with as much priority as possible. And again, you see I'm moving in a tight angle, basically a circle around those skulls that are still cycling behind me. Basically that you can keep them in a perpetual cycle around you indefinitely, but you're always having to keep in mind that there's these rogue randomly drifting skulls coming around and causing all matter of chaos. I haven't even begun to discuss the large tower that you can see in the background there. That appears at 245 seconds, and typically if you're trying to do this without homings, which is quite a bit more complicated, then in a run where you'd be using homings quite a bit more liberally to try and clear this all out as fast as possible. The 3 gem tower spits out a very large skull, as you would have seen there, the very large, bulky, wide skull. If you focus fire on that as you're moving in these circular loops to keep the smaller skulls under control, you will be able to deal with it without any issues whatsoever. Again, as I'm moving in that loop, I am targeting the aggressive skulls that are heading towards me, as well as the towers which expose their gems to me. As you can see here, I've begun to aim down the 3 gem tower, because that has actually much bulkier gems which take quite a bit more sustained damage. In the process of doing this, I am still aware that those skulls are behind me, so I am continuing to maintain this circular motion. And you will see in almost every higher level play that this same strategy is employed everywhere. Because the skulls are very predictable in that they are always chasing you, however their movement arc when they're adjusting to approach you is very wide, or at least wider than yours is, because you can move in very tight motions compared to the skulls, which have to drift out quite a radius before coming back towards you, which allows me to move in these tight circles and keep them circling around me without any difficulty at all. So by this point there shouldn't be too many skulls on the arena, and you're just trying to focus down the towers before you hit the magical 260 second number. And the reason you want it down by the 260 seconds is because at that point you have the next phase coming up, which involves the 3 gigapedes bursting out of the ground at the same time. Again, keeping in mind that the towers are all rotating clockwise, and I am moving in an anti-clockwise circle. So here I finished off the last tower, and you can see the gigapedes heads just bursting out. If I was a little faster, I would be able to position myself on the far side of the arena from where I am seeing the dust clouds from these gigapedes coming from. As you can see here, I'm compensating for that by moving towards the far side of the arena. But as this is just a demonstration of the early game, I'm not even going to begin discussing this, and I will include a guide that goes into them into comprehensive detail below in the description. So as you can see here, I just stand still and let them coil all around me and demolish me. So I'll play it again in normal speed so you get more of a sense of the pace and momentum that's involved. A tower rotates in a full circle once every 10 seconds. And so it takes 2 rotations or 20 seconds before the tower is primed to spit gems out, spit skulls out again. You can see that I'm always being very mindful of the targets that I'm aiming for first, and that the spider's face is the hitbox itself, not the actual gem. In terms of when you're getting the upgrades, you get the first upgrade when you hit 10 gems collected, which should happen after you have killed the spider and the horned skull that comes from the 2 gem tower. If you've collected all the gems up to that point, you should get the boost at around 48 or so seconds, 48-50 seconds. It is possible to be using the shotgun during this phase, however the difference with the shotgun and the stream is that despite the shotgun having a higher damage output, it is also much more spread out in shots, and so for enemies like the spiders, you will run into difficulty because if you're trying to shotgun fast, sometimes you can fail to shotgun and the spider will drop its head and become much harder to kill. Now, I personally use shotgun and prefer to use shotgun quite a bit, but stream is much more reliable if you want to aim at something and make sure that it is cleared out. As you can see, if I've got my aim on it, it goes down without much difficulty at all. With the skulls that move in a random direction, when they are drifting around, you often have to use predictive aim, so basically aim your shots in front of where you predict the skull to be moving towards, especially if it's at the other side of the arena. You want to aim slightly ahead of it where it will be, because the daggers have a delay before they actually hit their mark. See, at that point, 185, you could go dip underneath where that centipede is, but because there's only a narrow margin before the towers start spitting out more skulls, it's not usually worth the risk. Even though here I delayed a bit on clearing the towers, which did have exposed gems, and that's why the 229 point where the 6 towers appear ended up being a little bit difficult. Most of the time, if you are focusing on the gems on the towers you can see and moving mostly anti-clockwise, you won't have much of a difficulty cleaning up before 229. So yeah, hopefully this guide has provided you with a bit of insight and explanation of some of the strategies that you see used in higher level play, and hopefully it encourages you to apply some of it for yourself. If you are a lower level or a lower ranked player, maybe it will inspire you to put a bit more time into self-improving in the game, because the fact that only 6,000 or 7,000 people have reached this point in the game is testament to the fact that a lot of people haven't seen the potential craziness that this game devolves into. We haven't even covered the insanity that happens when you get to towards 300 seconds, or the boss, or the end game loop, which is truly crazy time. And it takes practically mastery of all of these early game strategies to a whole new level. And the game can appeal to some people who are willing to put the effort in to self-improve, repeating the same process over and over, and it might not appeal to some others who are less tolerant to it, and that's fine. Not all games are made for everyone, and this is definitely not an easy game to recommend if you haven't got the discipline to grind and repeat cycles until you improve. But again, thank you for watching, and hopefully you've enjoyed this video.